Hi, welcome back to Via Actorem. I'm Manuel C. Cruz, MFA Acting, and we are at the TAWL number 7. The actor will learn to be prepared. Now, what does that mean, to be prepared? Well, let's see here. It's been my experience in some actors will receive their script. They will immediately take out a highlighter and highlight all their lines. They will then memorize those lines and they will regurgitate them in rehearsal. And that's about the extent of their preparation. The prepared actor requires a little more work. Um, let's start with the script itself. As I said in a previous video, Sir Anthony Hopkins is famous for reading his script 200 times. 200 times to find every little nuance that's in there. Now, I personally don't read it 200 times, but I know I read it about a couple of dozen times to make sure that I'm catching everything. And before each performance, before each rehearsal, I'm rereading the script to make sure that, I'm catching everything. So that's one thing to be prepared. The other thing is the actor's homework. I call it homework. Uh, lot a lot of actors that I know kind of skip that part. Um, the homework entails course work, what I call course work. Now, this is nothing new. It's been taught since Stanislavski, but I've arranged it in an acronym, CORES, to make it easy to remember. It's visual, it's sequential, and it kind of encompasses all kinds of learners. Starting with the C in CORES, circumstance. What's the circumstance? What has happened in that moment before, and especially at the top of the script, something has happened before that script even begins. And so the actor has to discern what is it that's happened that is motivating them to speak or to do and speak at the top. The O part is the objective. What does the person want? What is motivating them to speak and act? And it's kind of a double O too, because the objective has an obstacle. What's keeping you from getting it? And you have to figure out how you want to get what you want. The R is your relationship with the other person. You got to figure out who they are, what kind of relationship you have with them. I mean, if you are dealing with a no good bum roommate, you're going to speak to him in a different way than you would say if you are speaking to your boss. You would be a little more respectful in most cases to your boss, or maybe even to your father or your mother. How would you speak to your sibling? These all dictate what the tone is going to be like. E, what is your emotional prep? There are about 5 basic human emotions, and they all the other emotions kind of branch off of that. You're happy, you're sad, you're mad, you're surprised, these sort of things. So you got to figure out where you're going to start. Now, that doesn't mean that the entire scene or the entire play or the entire movie is going to stay within that emotion, but you got to start somewhere. Something's going to act upon you and will or can change that emotion. And the last one is, what is at stake for you as the individual in that scene? And what I mean is, what's going to happen if you don't get what you want? And the stake has to be dire. I mean, someone has to die. The world has to explode if you don't get what you want. This is how important the stakes are, and how it will motivate you to figure out a way to get your objective. So that's the core's work. And then I take all that information and I kind of make a folder for myself. Or actually, sometimes I make a binder depending on whether or not this is a period piece or just how far my research goes. And research is important. I like to also go in and read about the playwright. There's an old saying that writers write about what they know. And in most cases, the playwright is going to write about the things that they have experienced. In the case of Anna in the Tropics, when I did that play, I went back and I read about Nilo Cruz and found out what his upbringing was like, and how much it influenced that particular script. And so, it was helpful to know what the playwright was like, what the experiences of that person were, and also go in and look up the time period, because Anna in the Tropics is set back in the 20s and 30s, and so look at what it was like in that time period in the panhandle of Florida among the Cuban American community, and what was it like to work in a cigar factory, and the tradition of the reader reading a novel to the workers as they're working, and it all adds up into this wonderful stew that you're preparing for yourself in order to go in there and do truthfully throughout. Put that in a binder. Also, here in the 21st century, it's so much easier than when I first started off as an actor. I started off back in the late 80s, early 90s, and if you wanted to do research, you had to go to the library, you had to walk among the stacks and the magazine racks and things like that and look things up. Here in the 21st century, all you have to do is Google stuff, and pop. It's there in front of you. It's on your phone, your PC, your laptop, whatever device you happen to be using. Use it. Find out what the time period was like. Look up photos, if possible, of that time period, and that'll give you a feeling of what's going on. And so that's the intellectual homework that the actor has to go through in order to be prepared. All right. Then, of course, there is the memorization. It's always been the bane of my life. I mean, I've never really, I'll be honest, never been really good at memorization. Like many young actors, I used to highlight all my lines in order to be able to spot them on the page quickly during rehearsal. But I found out a little better process for myself in graduate school. I found out that if I, don't highlight my lines, but rather the line that I'm responding to, it helps motivate me to speak the line that I'm given. And it's dependent on the intellectual preparation that I just talked about. But you go in there, and the person who is speaking to you will say something or do something that will make you speak. And if you highlight that line that other person is saying, it will motivate you to say the line that is written down for you. I found that to be far more effective than just highlighting my lines. I mean, I'm still reading my lines. I'm still memorizing the words. But I'm doing that without meaning. And by that, I mean that I'm taking in the words of my lines without meaning, kind of like what my instructor Laura Henry would say is memorize like a cone head. Learn your lines just for the words and remember the order of the words. And then your training and your preparation will motivate you or will put you in that moment. Also, the captain of your ship is the other person, you know, the way they say their lines, what they do with their face and things like that will create an opinion for you to respond truthfully and in the moment. Uh, Preparation and training, folks. And that the third and last thing that I'm going to talk about preparation is training. Training, training, and more training. I mean, and I'm talking about training like you would work and work like you would train. Take it seriously. A lot of folks, I'm sorry, that's not I mean a lot of folks. It's been my experience, I should say, that some actors will take their training as if it's playtime. They'll play theater games, that sort of thing, but they don't make the connection. They don't make the connection between the training and the work. And if you make that connection that, okay, I'm training to work this way, then the actor is prepared. So, this video is about preparation. Be prepared, actor. Be prepared. Do everything that is possible to prepare. I'm Manuel C. Cruz. Thanks for joining me.